So thank you all for coming tonight, and please give a warm welcome to Mickey Harmon.
Well, hello. I think I know everyone here, besides a few. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mickey Harmon, as John said, local illustrator and artist. When I was approached to give this talk, I was kind of awestruck. I didn't realize that nearly a decade had gone by since I had been a practicing artist, and that actually lived in the city limits, growing up in the suburbs. And you know, you go through life reaching these arbitrary milestones, and you never really set out to achieve them. So here we are, and I want to thank you for sharing it with me. Suppose you could say my work and my attitude toward our local cultural scope is one that has been developed in a post-urban renewal world. I won't sit up here and bore you with, Buffalo's blunders of Mecca Robert Moses ripping trees out of the Humboldt Parkway, or, the local Illuminati who plotted against public interest to store UB above Kenton. But these are all the things that we know and live in our current reality. And I want to take some time just to view the reality of these blunders from someone who grew up in the shadow of them, and, well, the shadow of 4 Super Bowl losses, and Zuba pants still haunt me to this day. So this is my father and my brother, and I grew up in Cheektowaga, and I always say don't tell anybody that. But I was the middle child of 2 lower middle class people. My mother, she worked a lot of odd jobs and whatnot, but my father was a Boilermaker. So my bathroom always smelled of, lava soap and metal. And my mother always said at dinner time, you're lucky because we ate sandwiches of lard and ketchup. So what you have in front of you, you're lucky to have. So I grew up kind of thinking of Buffalo as this war-torn city that had no beauty to it, and besides the, random trips to an eccentric aunt's house in the Elmwood Village, I had never really seen much of it. So, sorry, I lost my place here. These beginnings would forever fascinate me, hearing about how great the city used to be, how my aunt would say shopping downtown was so exuberant, and tons of people filled the streets. And every time I went down there for Pilot Field for a baseball game, it was completely empty. So for me, it's the resilience of Western New York. It's the people, the industry, and the community, and you could say we're all a collaborative whole. I'm not going to talk about Super Bowls, and I'm not talking about talking proud, but rather the notion that Western New York has been at rock bottom for so long that in the end we all kind of just have each other. And we have community, and we definitely have our problems of dying schools. We are one of the last cities to actually integrate our schools. And racially divided neighborhoods, but what you get out of Buffalo itself is community, and the people are still standing here, and my work tends to be a testament to that. So I'll start off with my first exhibition, Fiction of Structures it was called. I was a senior at Buffalo State, and you could say I was the only excited student to register in the fall of 2007. Because finally I finished my associates at Erie Community in at the North Campus, and I transferred to Buff State, and I moved to Elmwood. So why would anyone be excited to go to Buff State? I could finally be exposed to and kind of have the city at my whim. I could explore it. I could finally live all of these notions that I heard growing up. So, I ditched the car, and I took to bike and bus, and I walked everywhere, and I stood in the shadows of these great monoliths of this great age that I had always heard about. And, I took notes. It was in the formidable time that I really had a grasp of the environment in which I, had grown up in the shadow of. And over those 3 years, I filled like 10 composition notebooks of walking tours and stories I heard. And, I went to the Tri-Main Center, City Hall, all of F.L. Dubs, that's Frank Lloyd Wright if you're not privy, all of his masterfully designed projects, and including the loss of his administration building, which not a lot of people know about. And if you go to Larkinville in the parking lot, there is a huge block of masonry that used to be the corner of the building. So I always thought that that was kind of a romantic theme that Buffalo always has, is you have these relics all over town. So, you know, going through all of these places and learning all this, at the end of your senior year as a communication design student, you have to put on an art show. So I wasn't about to do wine labels or stationery package. I was going to take all this knowledge and do vectored illustrations of these stories and architecture that I had, you know, come to learn about. So I did fiction of structures, and it is architecture-inspired movie posters, or just the lore around the local culture. So we start out with Love Canal, obviously a zombie movie. The corruption, the toxic leaks, they built a school on top of the canal, for Christ's sake. Basically, each structure would give me the feeling for what the film would denote. I think local outfits should definitely approach me for at least a play about this one, if not a full-length feature movie. Now, City Hall, one of my favorite iconic structures, actually the stars in the crowd tonight. Julie, give a bow. This building for me is so romantic, it felt like a rom-com, you know, in the modern age. I grew up in the 90s, so obviously that's kind of how that came to be. But it was constructed for nearly $7 million, which is like something like $100 million today. And you know, it took about 4 years to build, and it was one of the last massive public works projects that Buffalo saw. So I felt like that was a nice testament to the last resurgence of power and industry and whatnot. So there's a few more romantic ones for you. Sensitive movies as well, like The Sisters of Spinster Row. Oh man, looking back at these. I think Little Women with a dash of Allentown's past, you know, fabric and sewing sweatshops. Room with a View is kind of my take on A Breakfast at Tiffany's. Also built while City Hall was being built. You know, instead of humidity, the hot, sultry 2000s rom-com starring Julie, I went with a classical approach to romance, penthouses overlooking a city at its height. The Albright. The Albright Knox was my take on a heist movie. So stealing Albright, breaking Knox. I think it was my most designed poster of the bunch. But, you know, it's the pinnacle of what I understood at that age as a general desire to have your work hung in such a prestigious place. I haven't quite made it there yet, but as soon as I pick up a paintbrush, I'll be sure to let you all know. Now, some of these, they definitely took a dark turn. The Richardson Complex, for instance, was one of my first introductions to Grover Cleveland. Through reading papers and books about this place, and ultimately City of Light by Lauren Belfer, which everybody should read if you're a Buffalonian or love Buffalo. It basically outlines all of the industry titans and culture around 1901 and the assassination, and it's kind of like a crash course in local history. Private schools, it's required reading, not so much in Cheektowaga. So in essence, humanity's vanished. Basically, the rumor goes Grover Cleveland dumped a mistress in here and her baby in an infant asylum, and that was kind of a very nasty rumor for an election cycle, if you ask me. So not long after that, during the 30s and 40s and 50s, automation really hurt Buffalo. It took quite a lot of time for the city to catch up to a middle class that could afford cars. You know, tearing down iconic structures for surface parking lots, you know, was horrible, and preservationists would go mad today if they were around back then. But the urban renewal of the 70s came too late, and it took many wonderful buildings, and an Art Deco train station, once considered the icon of transport, would soon stand weed-strewn and neglected. So here's Deco land. Now, not everything has to be so serious when talking about the Victorian age of Buffalo. I lighten the series up with a Wild West-inspired Victorian political thriller comedy called Total Inauguration. I was in college, okay? I mean, who doesn't want to see Teddy Roosevelt riding a mechanical buffalo all the way to the White House while fighting off Polish anarchists, you know? Now, as usual, I needed one more piece to complete my series for the gallery in which it was held. It was at the Carpelli's Manuscript Library up on North next to the Co-op House. And, you know, what could I possibly touch base on that would make for a good poster? Well, I thought, you know, I grew up in Cheektowaga, just outside of Amherst, the east side, and Snyder. So why not attack Amherst? So, welcome to beautiful East Amherst, New York, you know, where suburban sprawl makes the Queen City crawl. Anyone who knows me, I have a disdain for the suburbs. Yeah, I know it's trendy to hate on them and whatnot, but after learning all about them and everything that Buffalo was, you can't help but blame them for a lot of the problems that we have today. And it's kind of a national theme as well, I think. So that is my first college art show. Now, coming off of the heels of that, I know, I have a story. Coming off the heels of that, I became kind of obsessed with Grover Cleveland. This was outside the grand opening of 500 Main Street Studios, chalk art, whatever. But it wasn't until after I graduated college that I actually had the opportunity, I always had yearned for it as a kid, which was a graphic novel, cover-to-cover story. So it was pretty natural for me to pick Grover Cleveland, such, you know, that opportunity would arise. So the Western New York Book Arts Center approached me for their 2014 series of programming to come up with something for that year. So finally I had the outlet and I could actually sit down and put together this graphic novel. I have two left, so be very careful. I'm going to walk you through the story a bit just to get you into my mindset. With all that I, you know, had learned through walking tours and whatnot, this man lived one of the richest lives in Buffalo. So this was the first time I had, you know, to actually collaborate, of all the collaboration I talk about, collaborate with a writer. And this is Scott Mancuso, a friend at the time. And he wrote the entire thing for me, but from the perspective of the struggle to be a good person. You know, working with a writer or another artist, I think, is so important nowadays because you get that outside critique in perspective, and collaborative wholes are paramount to developing my own style and taste, and I think it's a critique that I need to move forward in my art form. But one perceptions of an image or idea vary so greatly from person to person, so I definitely take solace in all the artists that I converse with. Now on to Grover. Now, Grover, or I should say Grovey in this instance, was born in Caldwell, New Jersey. He spent his formidable years from 18 to 45 in Buffalo, working as a law clerk for his uncle Lewis Valley Allen. Yes, Allen as in Allentown, because back then it was all farmland, and he kind of rode on the coattails, being garnered toward, you know, society and law, and he climbed the ranks. And you know, personally, he was a bit of a train wreck, so this made for a great story. The struggle of a man who fought for the little guy, but never for himself, and who did the right thing and right by his community, but not by his children, which some of them were illegitimate, allegedly. During his campaign for re-election, a childbirth, insane, and infant asylum scandal was running rampant all over Buffalo, but this didn't stop Grovey from winning that first election. He won, and he soon moved to the White House, and it was there he began to correspond with his former client's daughter, Buffalo's own Frances Folsom Cleaves. It was through these letters that that one still gets me so much. He's like, oh, I gotta calm down with this hot letter. Now Frances, her childhood home is actually right near Betty's, so next time you go to brunch, you can go read the beautiful placard. It's an Italianate mansion. It's still maintained today. And they were actually married in the, got ahead of myself. So he courted her through letters, and, you know, he's like, marry me, you can be, you know, live in the White House and this, and she's kind of, you know, despondent to do that because after her father had died, he had worked with her father in the law firm, and he became the executive of her estate. which is very odd because then he ends up marrying her at the ripe age of 21 in the White House in the Blue Room. So Franny Folsom Cleaves became the youngest first lady in history and the only first lady to give birth in the White House. Now, Grovey went for re-election, of course, and he lost. And we all know he served 2 non-consecutive terms. But he was re-elected in 1984, and as his title is first president to ever serve those 2 non-consecutive terms. He served his 4 years justly, and then he retired back to Caldwell, New Jersey. While still in the public eye, which is one of my favorite facts, he had a tumor growing in the top of his mouth. So the city, or his cabinet or press people or whatever, decided that they would book this fishing expedition in the Long Island Sound. And then he actually had the tumor removed while on a yacht in the Long Island Sound, which, I mean, nail emoji for Grovey. So speaking on collaboration again, Sean Rafter, I don't know if you know Rafter built at all. I commissioned him to build me 10 shadow boxes because during the exhibition I didn't just want to hand out these graphic novels. I wanted to pick 10 strong scenes to re-illustrate missed opportunities from the book, and this being one of them. So you have the boat floating in and out of the tumor mouth and whatnot. And so I had to document these things. And as far as collaborations go, Candace Camulia, I think most of you know who she is. She's working under Whom Studio out of Brooklyn now. But she went around Buffalo with me in a borrowed car, and we took all of these pictures you see here. This one in particular is another take on the wedding from the novel. And John Philip Sousa actually played their wedding. Which, again, I mean, how much more could this guy do, This shadow box depicts Grovey hanging one of the 3 murderers he hung while he was the sheriff and executioner of Erie County. So a lot to dive into, definitely, when I was doing this. He was very busy. This one's more of a conceptual one. Like I said, he was a bit of a train wreck in his personal life, but he was very righteous in his political life. So he's kind of just chasing the titans and industry titans and corrupt politicians out of City Hall. So for me, collaboration takes one idea and expands exponentially. I feel like today we're all connected so much that it's only natural to pull all those creative minds together to produce work. We see it every day here. I really can't imagine a Buffalo without all these collectives. I first stepped foot into Dreamland 3 years ago, and when they opened their doors. And through my partner Robert, I had met Dana before they even had started Dreamland. And I had no idea that she was going to approach me in last spring on hope of collaborating on a project about a local dystopian future. My ultimate goal was to start at Grovey and work my way up through the 100 years. But when someone asks you to do a 2077 future without Kiss 98.5 or Carl Palladino, why would you deny that? So a few years after the global end of the modern age, Buffalo being the first to be destroyed. It's a future without Zuba pants and North Face jackets. Now those are used as armor. Her vision of the new Buffalo, I was immediately engaged in this idea because just think of all the stories you could tell. Chicken wing bone jewelry, like blue cheese is currency maybe? I don't know. You could sit up and dream up so many possibilities. But the first chapter follows Weck, and Weck is an East Side scavenger. There you see her overlooking her domain of Lafayette Square, which is now in ruin. The downtown library has now become a slave market. And basically it follows her around Buffalo, and she's a scavenger trying to scrape up enough money to move to the Island Grand, where apparently everything is okay. So Weck runs into a slave hag, and I think she's a millennial grandma in my head at that time. And she goes on a wild goose chase all around the city looking for big adventure. or a big treasure, I should say. I won't spoil a lot of little Easter eggs. There's quite a bit of nods to our current reality, but they're abundant, so don't you worry. So for a story like this, it really challenged me as an artist to push even further what I had done before with groving. Google Earth is my best friend because I don't have helicopter access. I mean, illustrating full-page graphic novels is something that took me out of my comfort zone. And I think this one took me maybe 2 weeks to fully complete, which is slow for me, I guess. But, you know, who doesn't want to, or I'm sorry, it's quite time-consuming. On top of it, illustrating the apocalypse because everything is such a mess. There's just shit everywhere. And basically, like, you know, but like with every great imagery in retrospect and all those milestones I talked about, this one I would definitely toast a bottle of Frank's with any one of you guys, and especially with her. You know, collaboration, like I've stated numerous times above or below or during. Wow, really overlooked that one. It keeps you relevant, you know. It broadens your respect for not only your craft, but everyone's craft around you. With an open mind, you can pretty much achieve anything. I love Buffalo and Western New York, and it's very apparent in my work to date, and I don't think it's a theme that will ever go away. It's my belief that as artists, we have a social obligation to reflect our communities in the work that we do. And I don't think there's any better way to do that than through collaboration. You know, without Scott, Dana, Candace, you know, the scores of other beautiful artists I know, I wouldn't have found the stories that I wanted to tell. You know, through the years of living and working and playing in Buffalo, I've made a lot of friends, and a lot of them are artists. And just recently, me and 5 of my friends took over the old Glow Gallery on Allen Street, and we opened up a retail shop gallery. The gallery will feature every 2 months a new artist on one wall and all of our stock of illustrations and art on the other. And it's basically the accumulation of the last 10 years of my travels, you know, through collaboration, through being as outgoing as I am and working with all these people. I couldn't have made it this far without any of them, really. And dozens of local outfits exist today. Sugar City, Dreamland, the artists at 125 Collective, which is relatively new, Dope Collective, Peach Magazine, The Public, for instance, which is a great asset for all of us, and of course, Pineapple. I myself am very proud to be a Buffalonian, and I hope all of you are too. So thank you very much. Now I didn't originally include this because I'm that scatterbrained, but John mentioned my Buffalo Minecraft, and it is on YouTube. And I'll kind of let this play in the background while anybody has any questions for me. This, I'll just explain it a bit. So like John said, I just saw this for $20 on the Xbox. Thanks. I did. Oh, maybe I have to maximize this window? Oh, maybe shut off Keynote. Yeah, questions while I figure it out if you'd like.
Yeah, dragging it over to one side. You can grab the. Oh yeah.
Oh, there we go. But now I can't.
Yeah, try to.
Oh, I can see it from up here. There we go. I'll explain this a bit more. So I just, I play video games quite a bit. I think it's the only thing John and I talk about when we're around each other. But I saw this Minecraft, I had heard about it, I didn't really know what it was, and it was $20 on the Xbox store, so I bought it. And I'm like, okay, I played with Legos as a kid, so what the hell am I gonna make? So I decided, oh, that's Byron Brown as a Sphinx. But anyways, Actually, that was a Dreamland suggestion. So I built City Hall. Like, I was gonna build City Hall. May as well start there. Well, I decided to build the interior and exterior, which was very ambitious and took about 3 weeks. So I scrapped that. All the rest of the buildings are hollow. I won't lie to you there. But then John had come over for studio visit, and I showed him all my work over the years, and he's like, okay, fire up that Xbox. I want to see this Minecraft thing. So I showed him City Hall, and I kind of had this area worked out at this point. He was like, okay, we'll book you a year from now. And this is a Janet Snyder Statue of Liberty. Janet Snyder's a local DJ, if you don't know. And I just went nuts with it. I pretty much built from City Hall down to Hallwalls for the opening. So this little trip takes you around Buffalo in my imagined version of the Niagara River. Grover Cleveland as Stalin. Any questions anyone has for me while this plays? That's pretty much all of the Easter eggs in this one.
Mickey, you didn't really give us any clue as to who are some of your artistic influences, leading to your own, drawing-based work, or, were there comic artists in your past, or illustrators, or designers that had a great effect on you?
Well, for me, I think it was, drawing, once I got out of Buff State, I could finally return to pen and ink, because there you're learning Adobe and, essentially a trade for me. But I always paid attention to like the old industrial diagrams that had no illustrators, or, just like the way in which things were so heavily shaded, or, really Victorian time, like industry is what I was pretty much drawn to. So I think that paired with realizing exactly where I happen to exist, I think really pulled all the illustrative qualities that I do in my work today.
What's on the horizon?
Which horizon? Oh, on the horizon for me. Oh, you meant. Thanks. Right now, another collaborators in our midst, Kevin Thurston over here is a local writer and poet. He works for the Public, and he's done numerous projects. We are right now working up a coloring book, an adult coloring book. I won't butcher it too bad, but essentially it's called Color Me White. And it is basically all of the horrible things you've heard straight white men say over the years, paired with some poetry. Right?
And some good things too.
And, well, good things, of course. It's very lighthearted. So I'm working on that, and as far as New Buffalo goes, that WEC chapter is the first of 3. And Gutter Pop, I sat down with Steven over at Gutter Pop, who just opened this year. And he's going to actually help me, because I don't know how to take it from what I have into publishing. So he's basically, I'm going to be in his January line of local artists available at Gutter Pop. And hopefully Color Me White as well. So juggling those two. And I'm also a graphic designer for a children's publishing company, 9 to 5. But it allows me to do all of these things because it's very 9 to 5.
How long did this Minecraft take you?
Well, if City Hall doing the interior and exterior took me 3 weeks, I'd say I put about 10 hours a week over a year into it, usually hung over on Sundays. And it was a lot. I mean, this project spans 2 relationships, and Minecraft didn't make the not my fiance and my ex break up with me, but he would work nights and I would work days, and he was helping me initially, and he built the main place tower, and there's Hallwalls again, nice and hollow. He built the main place tower, but he built it an entire block too far. And he like built the whole ugly brown complex, like the whole thing. So I made him blow it up and rebuild it. Well, I didn't make him, but we blew it up together and he remade it. It was very sweet of him to do. But I can't imagine the kids that play this. I mean, my eyes were bleeding by the end of it. It's just so pixelated. And you'd think growing up with Nintendo in 1989 up until now, I'd be accustomed to it, but no.
I remember you told me, but I can't remember. How many passes did it take you to record this?
Yes. Well, so you guys helped me out a lot with that. Again, not my forte, but we got the recorder and essentially, I think it took 24 hours to actually package as an 8-minute video. And I think it took us about 2 days to chop all the clips together.
How
And
many times, like, did you?
how many captures?
Well, because when you're running through it, it's easy to
Right.
muck it up as like
Mhm.
this is pretty smooth.
Yeah, well, that was all in post.
Yeah.
Another ex of mine did that. I'm seeing a theme here now. Actually, Nick Blazier, Vidalia May, who's a beautiful drag queen graphic designer. It's quite a title. He actually mixed the track to this too for me. Still a good friend of mine. And it was Little Boxes by Melvina Reynolds. And he kind of gave it like an 8-bit sound. So when you guys approached me to do this initially, I was very charged because I had all this conceptual work behind me, and it could kind of push the limits of, it's like, okay, if you really love Buffalo this much, you better build the city in Minecraft because it exists. But man, oh man, lots and lots of hours, lots and lots of help too, so.
So is the nature of this that it just exists on the game cartridge? Like to actually play this?
It's
you made,
on, yeah,
it
it's,
has to be on your game cartridge.
right, so the format goes, ew, who else did this? Robert Hartman,
Wow, very similar.
let's see,
Hartman, huh?
First Niagara Center. Ew. All right, anyways, it's basically because I downloaded it from the Xbox store, it just went on the hard drive. So the real challenge was pulling, at first I was going to pull it onto a PC and borrow a PC and then do all the editing through there. But you can actually buy gameplay recorders, which is a huge thing, like all those people put their gameplay on YouTube and whatnot. So you can make it hit record as it's hooked into your system, and then you play it, and then it captures your gameplay. So that in turn transferred to a Mac, transferred to a software converter, transferred to Adobe After Effects, and then it was all compiled. Yeah, this is crap.
This is like exactly what you wouldn't do.
Right, well, I mean, I give them a lot of,
First Niagara Century.
well, there's the crosswalks, I didn't do that. I didn't build another bitchy part about it was that I decided blowing up the soil to put in cobblestone was the natural way to go when I could use half bricks to just lay on top of the soil. So I had to literally blast trenches like all the way through. It was very confusing. But yeah, that's that. Oh, that's nice. Anyone else?
I mean, that second one was fun because that's sort of like he's trying to capture what it really looks like now.
Right,
And, yours is an imagined terrain.
right.
That combines.
Well, because like the core was to scale, and I guess it's to scale, but yes, the outlining. What am I doing with all this open space? Which is why Stalin, Grover Cleveland, Janet Snyder, relics and false idols.
But I always thought that some of the vistas that you did in toward the waterfront, that kind of sense of openness, I realized that's like, well, I didn't have to build anything there.
Right.
less work to do that. But at the same time, it kind of has a little bit of an aspirational
Mhm.
quality to it.
Oh yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, I wish we had a sign on the top of our building that said Hallwalls the way you do.
Right, and very easy. Within like 3 minutes, you could put that up there.
That would be wonderful.
And as human being, you just kind of float and run through the air. I mean, we'd have 15 city halls by now. So that is pretty much the last decade of my life, guys. Is there any other questions?
I was wondering if you could talk a little, maybe this is too general
No.
question, but like, whether you could talk a little bit more about your relationship to Buffalo, which I guess is what your whole speech was about. in a
Right.
way, but like, I mean, I'm wondering whether you always felt like this was your home and you should, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people I know who are like creative people or people who like,
Somewhat
Yeah.
drained by.
yeah, like at some point they think about, like I know myself, for example, like I recently decided I'm probably gonna stay here, but like it took me a while to warm up to the city
Right.
who came from somewhere else.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if I could.
Where is that? Yeah, I think that just comes from. Oh God, my family's very rough around the edges. I'm not ashamed of them, but I'm always like when they come around because they're of that generation that post World War II suburban, made it out of the city, scared white people generation. And I mean, not my parents so much, but their parents. And I just heard so many, the city, and I was fascinated by that. So for me, it's not about getting out of Buffalo, it was about getting to the big city. I always make the joke, like, I couldn't wait till I was in the big city. I was Buffalo, New York. But I think for me, the reason why I stay here is while I was in college, I was very nervous about finding a job. And, by the grace of God, I found kind of the perfect job, which is far and few because I don't think any publishing companies are anywhere near here but Toronto. And it's very much a base salary that keeps me afloat and pays my loans. But I just think of all the people and the stories and the beauty in a Rust Belt city. And I think that being born and bred and, smelling that lava soap from my father and really like salt of the earth kind of people fascinate me. So I think my upbringing in that and the humble beginnings my parents had kind of make me appreciate what it is today and what it can be. If that answers it.
Yeah, I think it does.
But I encourage everyone to stay. I mean, I want to dump 20,000 young professionals on the urban core and let's get shit done. But not up to me. Anyone else? Go
What's your inspiration for your biting humor?
My what?
Your biting humor?
Oh, God. Basically a family that does nothing but make fun of each other. I have an uncle. That's another great story. My mother is a wonderful woman, but I would be very insecure about my freckles growing up. It was a huge thing for me. And she would, a face without freckles is a sky without stars. It's very sweet. And then my overweight, vodka-drinking uncle would chime in and say, "You look like someone threw shit through a screen door at you." So, if that could, my humor is basically, any family function is basically like rib rubbing each other. Anyone who's met my family knows that.
How are you influenced by the Albright Knox of their collection? Do you like?
I think every time I go there, and it's not often enough, but every time I go there, and I have friends that work as handlers in different galleries and stuff, but the Knox family itself fascinates me more than the current state of it, and the whole story leading up until how that gallery opened, and it was one of the founding families of Buffalo were the Knox, and I don't want to misquote anything, but I mean just to be a fly on the wall with the Knoxes and the Rumseys and during Victorian age, and I learned all this through Lauren Belfer, and then, City of Light, which is historical fiction, which I pull a lot of my knowledge from. But then that was kind of like a jumping off point for me to delve more into factual things. And just, there was a board of these founding families that lost a ton of money after the assassination, because I think that happened within the first 6 months of opening, and they had a whole nother year of programming for the Pan Am, and just like ticket prices dropped as soon as McKinley was shot. And I just, how they scraped together and put together, am I saying all this right, the Knox family? Building up the Albright Knox? I think that's pretty much it. But the story of the gallery, rather than the actual gallery itself, for sure, is just another testament to the versatility and resilience of the area, I think. Anybody else? I also do, I wasn't going to talk about this because it's so silly, but I run a Tumblr called buffalebrity.com, and it's a satirical take on the stupidity of current events, and it's on it's buffalebs.tumblr.com, and I essentially have local writers write up quick quips about fake stories that may have happened. It's kind of like The Onion. So like Spot Coffee Elmwood opens up a daycare for Narden, or God, there are so many good ones. And I'm not a writer or good with words, usually, if you could tell. But I just kind of Photoshop ridiculous things. Just recently, white flight at Canal Side due to the loud fireworks, people thinking it was fire, guns going off and this, that, and the other. I just think it's a very silly, we're the beginning of the Midwest. So I feel like we set the standard for the rest of the football hooligans of the country. So I think a lot of funny things happen here that you can pull satirical things from. So check it out if you want to see some silly stuff. Anyone else want to break awkward silence?
Great talk.
Thanks. Thanks for coming, guys.